Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about this pot roast. It's tender, it's full of vegetables, it's extremely flavorful, and it's really easy to do. If you want to know how to do it, just stay tuned. Okay, so pot roast is one of those things that looks really complicated on a plate. Like when you see it, it looks like, oh my God, that had to be hard to do. But trust me, it is not. I'm starting off with about a 2.5 pound, 3 pound or so chuck roast, boneless chuck roast. I'm adding seasoning salt, garlic powder, onion powder, pepper, and beef bouillon. I'm using powdered beef bouillon to start it off, and I'll add some liquid beef bouillon later on into the broth for the roast before we cook it. But I will leave all of the measurements in the description box. I just start out by adding the seasonings, patting that and rubbing it in really well to make sure it gets down into the meat. Flip it over, do the same thing to the other side, and then we'll move on to the next step. Once you get everything added, make sure you rub everything in really well. We want to make sure all of your seasonings are rubbed in so that when you pick the roast up, that doesn't just roll off. You don't want all your seasonings to just roll off and not be on the roast anymore. So you rub it in really well, and then you add flour. Flour is added at this point because we're going to brown this roast. Browning the roast gives it a really rich flavor. You always want to brown a roast before you start cooking it because it does add in the depth of flavor in the roast, and you want to make sure that it's super flavorful, and those brown parts on the outside of the roast help to give it a really deep, rich flavor. So we're going to add flour to both sides, rubbing that in really well to make sure that doesn't come flying off when we pick it up. See, there's still some on there, but I'm going to add just a little bit more flour to make sure that it's fully coated with flour on the outside. And then we're going to take it to a screaming hot pan to brown both sides of it. Now we want to turn our heat up on our pan to about a medium high. We want it to be really hot when we add the roast to it, so you get a really good crust on the outside of the roast when you flip it over. So the smoke you can see coming from it, that is really hot. So I'm going to go ahead and add my roast. Now at this point, do not touch it. Let it sit until you start seeing a little brown come around the edges, and then you'll know it's ready to be flipped. If you do it before that, it may try to stick on you, so do not do that. Don't be tempted. Just let it sit. You'll start seeing a little bit of crust around the edge. Kind of check it to make sure it's brown, then go ahead and flip it over. Once you do that, flip it over to the other side and let the other side brown. But while we're doing that, we're going to prepare the pan that we're going to cook the roast in. To our pan, we're going to add beef broth, some sliced onion, a little bit of garlic powder, and a little bit of pepper. The beef broth already has a lot of flavor in it, so I'm just going to add a little bit extra garlic because I love garlic, and a little bit more pepper. And then I'm going to add the browned roast to this pan, and then we're going to cover it and put it into the oven. Now when covering this, you want to make sure you cover it really tight. Make sure that no air can get out. You kind of want to cover it as tight as you can. You can use a pot with a top, or you can just be like me and do it the old school way and cover it with foil and keep going. There's always more than one way to do this, guys, so whatever works for you, just do it. Just make sure that you don't let any air get out. Cover it as tightly as possible because we want it to get as hot in there as possible to make sure we really break down this roast and get it really tender. Now this has been cooking for about an hour and a half. It is not tender yet. You can see I can hardly break it with the knife. It's not tender yet. So we're going to cover it back up and let it go for another hour or so to see if it gets really tender after that point. Alright, so at this point it's been cooking for about 2.5 hours, and I think we should be good as far as tenderness is concerned. Yep, you can see it's starting to fall apart. I'm gonna break the roast up. Now this is an optional step. You do not have to do this. I break mine up so it's easier for my family to serve it and not take the whole roast when they take the roast, because that's the type of family that I have. They will take the whole roast and put it on their plate. If I break it up into pieces, then I know that everyone can get a portion and no one's going to miss out. So at this point, I add a little bit more water to the pan and I'm gonna start adding the vegetables in. Now, as for vegetables, I'm gonna add carrots, potatoes, and onions. Potatoes and carrots to me go with roast. That is what goes with it for me. That's the way I've always eaten it. So I absolutely love it that way. So that's what I put in mine. By all means, if you do not like carrots or you don't want potatoes, leave it out. You don't have to put them in, or the onions for that matter. I love onions too, so I put that in at this point. So I add it all in and make sure to push all those vegetables down into the broth to make sure that the broth is flavoring those vegetables as they're cooking. So we want to make sure that they're all pushed down into the broth, adding the onions, and then we're going to put it back in the oven uncovered at this point. I want to get a good crust on the top of the roast and cook the vegetables at the same time. So at this point, I'm going to leave it uncovered and put it back in the oven for about another 45 minutes or so, 30 to 45 minutes. At that point, check your vegetables and make sure that they're done. Fork tender is what you want. You don't want them falling apart and turned into mashed potatoes into your roast. You don't want that. You want nice big chunks of potato that hold together. So just make sure you're touching them with a fork. If your fork goes through there pretty good, that means they're done. Now, right before we go back in the oven, y'all know how I am about presentation. If you watch my videos, stuff has to look good before it tastes good. So I'm adding a little pepper, a little bit of paprika, and a little bit of parsley flakes to the top. When it comes out of the oven, you want people to be like, damn, that look good. That's what you want. That's what's gonna happen when you take this out of the oven. When you put a little bit of seasoning on the top, it makes it look that much better. And here it is. It is out of the oven. It is done. The potatoes are tender. They're not falling apart like mashed potatoes. The carrots are done. Everything is flavorful. You have a nice broth on it, and everything is done. The only thing left to do is to serve this up on a plate and get to eating, because this is gonna be some good eating, you guys. Pot roast cooked with carrots, onions, potatoes. Delicious. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, all of the ingredients will be in the description box below. I'll also leave playlists in the description box of other food videos that I have, as well as in the cards of this video. Again, I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all later. See you all in the next video. Bye for now.